Alright, so in this second video here, just recapping a little bit, if I wanted to complete the square on x squared plus 6x, what you do is you take half of these x's and you put them on one side of the square, take half of them, you put it on the other side of the square, and then you have to fill in the gap with some unit squares. To get that number, it's 3 times 3, or 3 squared. So you have to add 9 to this in order to complete the square. Alright, so notice also in the square of the binomial, this number 3 is the same number that you get whenever you take half of that middle term. So I want you to try it again, this time with x squared plus 10x. So obviously you need yourself a big x squared, and then you need 10 of these rectangles. So pause the video, rearrange your little shape, add in some unit squares to try to complete that square. Alright, so hopefully you were able to get it, and then it should turn out looking like so. So you take your big x squared, you put half of, or 5 of those x's on one side, half of them, 5 on the other side, and fill in the gap with unit squares. How many unit squares are we going to need? Well, one side is 5, the other side is 5. 5 times 5, or 5 squared, equals 25. Okay, so notice again, when we're completing the square, this is the trinomial that we would be given. We take half of this middle term, which is 5, and now we take that 5 and we square it, and we get 25. 25 is the number that we have to add to that in order to complete the square. In order to write it as the square of a binomial, whatever number we got after taking half, that's the number that goes into the parentheses. Now, something else that I'm going to point out is this, is that the ones that we were working with the algebra tiles only had an addition in here, had a plus sign. But if it was minus, you want to carry the minus sign down with whatever number it is that you're taking half, because that has to go inside the parentheses with it. Also, we were only looking at even numbers taken half of, just because it was easy to take half of those rectangles and put it on one side and the other on the other side. But we can have an odd number in there too. Okay, so in general, this is exactly what's happening whenever you complete the square. You're taking half of your x's and you're putting it on one of the other sides. In the blank that's left over, that blank is basically b over 2. b over is the middle term, and then you have to square it. That's exactly what we were doing before, but this is just looking at it with variables. So let's find the value of c, something that we'd have to add to this in order to complete the square. X squared minus 26x. So again, you want to take half of this number, which is negative 13, take the negative sign with it, and then you want to square that number. So this is half, and this is squaring, and we get plus 169. So the c value, the number that we have to add to this thing in order to complete the square, is 169. If I'm going to rewrite this as the square of a binomial, in the parentheses it goes x minus 13 quantity squared. Let's try another one. This one, notice it has an odd number in it. It's got a 7. Oh my gosh, what are we going to do? X squared plus 7x. Then we have to complete the square. So just like before, we're going to take half of that number. And I know that you want to write it as a decimal, but avoid that. You want to keep it as a fraction. It's 7 halves. I just divided that number by 2. And now I square that number. It's like squaring the top and squaring the bottom. So I have to add 49 over 4. So c is equal to 49 over 4. And whenever I go to write this as a square of a binomial, it's just x plus 7 halves quantity squared.